Hey guys, what's up? I'm Erin and welcome back to the channel. Someone recently asked a really great question in the comment section on this channel. When do our contributions to an investment account no longer really matter? What they're really asking is, at which point does my portfolio grow so much on its own that whether or not I continue contributing, it doesn't move the needle that much? That's a powerful question, and one many of us wonder about in one form or another, because it gets to the very heart of investing. When do you shift from your savings driving the bus to compounding doing the heavy lifting? Today, we're going to walk through exactly when this crossover happens, how it's different for everyone, and how to truly recognize that moment where compounding takes over growing your portfolio. Put simply, compounding takes over once the growth on your investments is consistently larger than the amount you're contributing each year. And that's the tipping point when compounding starts working harder than you are, when compounding starts to become the star of the show. Let's do a general rule of thumb. If you have $50,000 invested and you're contributing $20,000 every single year to your investments, your contributions are doing the heavy lifting. But if you have $500,000 invested and the market grows 7% in a year, that's $35,000 in growth. Suddenly, your $20,000 contribution looks small next to the growth. That's the moment where your returns are larger than your contributions, and that's the moment that I like to refer to as the crossover point. Let's put this in a table. Using our example of putting away $20,000 a year into investments and capturing a 7% annualized rate of return. When your portfolio is at $100,000, your contributions are a bigger part of the equation. Your contributions move the needle more than the growth on your portfolio. Once your portfolio reaches $300,000, your contributions are roughly equal to the growth in this example. Once your portfolio reaches $500,000, well, now your growth outpaces the contributions you're making. When you hit $1 million invested, at this point, your contributions barely matter at all. So in this example, we would say around the $300,000 to the $500,000 mark, your portfolio growth starts to become more important than your contributions themselves. And here's the bigger picture. If you're contributing $20,000 a year and capturing a 7% annualized rate of return, it would take you roughly 23 years to get $1 million invested. But let's look at what would happen if you stopped contributing at various markers along the way. What if you stopped at $100,000 invested? It would take 5 years to build up $100,000 with those contributions. If you stopped there, compounding alone would need another 35 years to reach $1 million. So that's about 40 years from the point you started investing until you reach $1 million. What if you stopped at $300,000 invested? Reaching $300,000 takes about 11 years of contributing. From there, compounding would need another 18 years to carry you to $1 million. In total, that's 29 years. And what if you stopped at $500,000? Getting to $500,000 invested would take about 15 years at this rate of contributions. If you stopped there, compounding could double it to $1 million in just 11 more years. So 26 years total. That's why we say around this halfway mark, around $500,000 in this situation, your contributions aren't moving the needle that much. Because if you were to contribute $20,000 every single year without fail until you hit $1 million, that would take 23 years. However, if you did that until you hit $500,000 invested and then stopped your contributions, it just takes an additional 3 years. And that very well may be a small trade-off when you consider the freedom of not having to make those contributions. And you could even make an argument for stopping contributions once you hit this $300,000 mark. Yes, it does stretch out the journey to the same $1 million target to 29 years versus 23 years, but that's only an additional 6 years. And again, you have that freedom of not having to make those contributions during this time. So the lesson here is simple. The longer you contribute, the faster you're going to reach your goal. But there does come a point where compounding takes over and your portfolio is going to carry you there regardless of what you're contributing. Early on, your savings matter most, but the further along you go, the faster compounding accelerates, and eventually your portfolio can double without you lifting a finger. The lesson is the more you contribute earlier on, the quicker compounding can take over, and once it does, it's incredibly powerful. And yes, you can make the argument that contributions always matter in one way or another, because every dollar you invest is another dollar that's working harder for you. But what we're trying to do here is identify when that shift happens, when compounding starts to do the heavy lifting, when your money is working harder than you are. Now, why does this matter? Early on, your job is simple. Save and contribute as much as you can. You are the engine that is pulling your portfolio forward. Mid-stage, saving and growth are working together. Your contributions still matter, but compounding is starting to pick up steam. Later stage, compounding does the heavy lifting. At this point, your biggest responsibility is to stay invested and make sure you don't make a mistake that knocks you off track. And here's the key takeaway. There isn't one magic number where this shift happens. It depends on your situation. If you save a lot each year, your contributions matter for longer. When you're putting away bigger chunks, you're the primary driver for a longer period of time. Let's say you're a really aggressive saver and say you're putting away $40,000 a year. Well, at this point, it might take until your portfolio's at $600,000 or $800,000 before compounding is the primary driver. If you save less each year, compounding becomes more meaningful sooner. Here it might take longer to reach six figures invested, but once you do, your portfolio can start to surpass your contributions at an earlier dollar amount. For instance, let's say you're putting away $10,000 every single year. Well, you might notice that compounding is adding more to your portfolio than you are once you hit a total invested amount of $150,000 or $250,000. Also, if the market grows faster or slower, the tipping point shifts. And this one's kind of intuitive. The higher the return you can capture, the sooner compounding takes over. If you have a portfolio where you can capture 7 or 8%, compounding is going to take over quicker than if you have a portfolio where you're capturing only 5%. The exact point when compounding takes over depends on how much you're saving and what kind of return you can capture. The more you save, the longer it's going to take. The lesser dollar amount you save, the quicker you're going to notice compounding takes over. That's why it's a range, not a specific dollar amount. We could also look at this through the lens of coast fire. Now, coast fire is where you aggressively save early on until you reach this point where you choose to maybe stop your contributions to investments and savings altogether, or you dramatically scale back your savings rate. The idea is simple. Hit this milestone as early as possible and then let compounding take care of the rest. The pressure is off you. Essentially, your portfolio is on autopilot until your target retirement age. For example, let's say you want to have $2 million invested by the time you reach 65. And let's also say that you want to save and invest aggressively as possible until the age of 30, at which point you want to stop having to contribute to your investments. How much would you need to have by 30 so that compounding alone at a 7% annual growth rate gets you to $2 million without you adding another dime? The answer is about $187,000. If you hit this target by 30 and left it untouched, compounding alone could carry your portfolio to $2 million by the time you reach 65. Now, is hitting $187,000 invested by the age of 30 realistic? For some people, yes, it depends on your income and your expenses and how aggressively you're willing to save. For others, it's not realistic. For others yet, maybe it's a more aspirational target. But this is what makes Coast Fire so powerful. Even if you don't hit this exact amount invested, the framework helps you to think about the trade-off between saving and investing aggressively now and more freedom and flexibility later. That's why Coast Fire is so appealing. You make sacrifices early on, so you know that throughout the rest of your career, you can breathe easy knowing that compounding has you covered. Let's talk about some of the big milestones when it comes to investing. Those points along the way that really stand out and remind you that compounding is working. The first $10,000 invested. This might not sound huge, but it is an important milestone. When you start out investing, often you start out by saving, say, $50 a week, or just 5, 10, maybe 15% of your paycheck. And it can take a while until you hit this point. But this is where you start to see that your efforts are paying off. You look at your account and you say, that's real money. You should celebrate that. The first 100,000. This is the milestone Charlie Munger and Warren Buffett always talk about. The hardest, but also the most important. Because once you're here, compounding really starts to feel real. Let's say you get to the point where you have $100,000 invested, and then we have a year like we did in 2024, and the S&P returns 25%. Well, all of a sudden, your $100,000 portfolio grows to $125,000. That is real momentum, and this is when you notice your money is working hard. Next, the crossover point, when portfolio growth is bigger than your contributions. This is what we talked about earlier here. It's that moment where your portfolio is growing by more than you are adding to it each year based on your contributions. And that moment isn't the same for everyone. It depends on how much you're putting away. But it is a powerful psychological shift when you notice that your portfolio is carrying more of the burden. It is growing your money by more than what you are adding. This next one is huge. It's the milestone where your portfolio is generating more than your job. For me, I always have a funny memory tied to this one. I've shared this before on this channel, but growing up, money and investing has always been a pillar in my life. My mom and my grandma shared money lessons with me from a very early age. By the time I was 8, I bought my first stock. It was Campbell Soup. My parents doubled my purchase of this stock on my birthday present. That is what I asked for. So investing has always been a part of my life. And I remember being in my early 20s and with my mom in a bank, and we were talking with a teller and saying how amazing it would be when you get your portfolio to the point where it's generating essentially your annual income or more as a return. And the teller turned to me and said, that never happens. That's not even a realistic goal. My mom and I looked at each other and we were thinking the same thing. This individual doesn't believe in compounding yet, but we both knew that if you stay in it for the long game, yes, it does happen. Another milestone is hitting your Coast Fire number. This is where you could stop saving altogether and compounding would carry your portfolio to your target goal by your target retirement age. Now, you can still contribute to your portfolio, but there's a great sense of relief in knowing that you don't have to. Another big milestone is having 1 times your annual income saved. This is another big one, often highlighted by Fidelity or T. Rowe Price as a retirement benchmark. And they often suggest that by the time you're age 30 or in your 30s, you should target to have 1 times your annual income invested. And this can put you ahead of the game when saving for your retirement. Now, I say this all the time. There's nothing magical about $1 million in practical terms. And yes, inflation has chipped away its significance, but still $1 million is a huge cultural marker, and it can be a fun goal to hit that nice round number, get an extra comma in your bank statement. But at the end of the day, you want to make sure you're chasing a goal that is meaningful for you and not just something that the culture has defined as important. Next, when your portfolio covers your basic living expenses. This is a really big milestone when it comes to peace of mind. When your portfolio generates enough on an annual basis to cover all of your essentials. So think of housing, transportation, healthcare, things like that. This is really your first taste of financial freedom. Now, your portfolio might not generate enough at this point to cover the little luxuries in life, like taking a vacation or a fancy dinner. But you have the security of knowing that if you were to lose your job for any reason, your portfolio would cover all of your necessities, and that does bring a great sense of security. Beyond that, when your portfolio covers all of your lifestyle expenses. This next step is when your portfolio is enough to cover your entire lifestyle, including all of the luxuries. So it would cover your housing, your food, your transportation, a vacation every single year, the life you want to live. And for many people, this is what they envision when they envision saving for retirement. And yes, for most people, it takes decades to get to this point. And finally, the ultimate milestone, when your portfolio sustains your entire lifestyle and you don't have to work anymore, but maybe you choose to. At this stage, when you choose to continue working, you're doing so because you love your job, because it gives you a sense of meaning, because you want to build a greater legacy to pass on. You're not just working because you have to. You're not working for the paycheck. You're working for something more. So here's the big picture. Investing is a journey of milestones. Early on, it's all about your savings. Every dollar you put in makes a big difference. Then, little by little, compounding takes over until eventually your portfolio is growing faster than you could ever contribute on your own. This is why it's important to focus on the milestones along the way, because your investing journey is going to be long. It is going to span several decades. And if you only focus on the very big milestones, like retirement or like hitting $1 million invested, it's easy to lose motivation. But instead, if you're willing to look at the smaller milestones along the way, like getting $10,000 invested, getting $100,000 invested, or hitting these crossover points, it can keep you on track and excited about the journey. In the end, wealth isn't built by one paycheck or one lucky year. It's built by time, consistency, and compounding quietly working in the background. That's when you shift from working for your money to having your money work for you. So what are your thoughts on compounding and these crossover points and these milestones along the way? Leave your thoughts in a comment down below. I post new videos every single week. If you got anything at all out of this one, please give it a like. If you're new here, please consider subscribing. Or if you know of someone who might get something out of this type of content, please consider sharing. I'll see you soon. Bye. Stay really great. Here we go. We're 30 seconds in. Really great channel in the comment. Your portfolio can start to surpass. Let's say all words together, not just stop immediately. Some days my tongue hurts worse than others, and today is one of those days. It is just not cooperating. In case you don't know, I bit off the tip of my tongue, so it's just not there, which makes sometimes saying certain things kind of hard. I just have this massive band of scar tissue right across the tip of my tongue. So it essentially just feels like it's tight all the time. And how... Okay, we're gonna go again.